And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 5, episode 37. And there's a lot of great stories in Division 3 men's basketball this year and women's basketball for that matter. And one of those is on the men's side with Denison being ranked number 19. The Big Red are 14-1, 6-0 in the league. And I thought, boy, what a great time to get Coach Chris Sullivan on here to talk about Big Red. And Chris, first of all, my disclaimer that I told you off the air is we have a new door being installed in our house, and there's absolute chaos 5 feet from me, as well as outside over here. So, like, the show must go on. If people hear banging and stuff, if you hear banging, don't be alarmed. I'm okay. There's a door being installed. Are you cool with that?
I'm good. Yep. Yeah, we tell our guys to fight through distractions. I gotta live the code.
Well, I appreciate it. It's so great to have you on here. Long overdue. You guys got to be feeling great right now, sitting here at 14-1. You're on the radar big time. We'll talk about where you are in NPI, which is in a great place. You're ranked 19 in the top 25 poll. Big picture wise, how are we feeling right now, Chris?
Yeah, feeling great. Feeling great. I think our guys are just really, really proud of all the work they've put in over the last couple of years to get to this point. And just grateful that the ball's bounced our way. We've stayed relatively healthy, and have just continued to find ways to keep getting better and keep finding wins.
When you look at the season to date so far, you've played some tough teams and you've had some really impressive games. The one that comes to mind from early in the season, that kind of the oh wow, like Denison looks really good, is when you beat Carnegie Mellon. And that was an awesome game. You won 79-78. That was back on November 16th. Kellen Smith hit a three with 11 seconds left to put you from down two to up one. That at the time, that had to have felt like a really big win because, as we both know, Carnegie Mellon is a great program from an elite league, and that's the kind of game that matters a lot in terms of the future and the NPIs and the calculations. What was that one like?
It was a ton of fun. Could have gone either way. Carnegie Mellon came in here and played a really tough game. We just put ourselves in a position to make some big plays late. But again, I think that game was just a real sign of all the work we've put in the last couple of years. I think one thing when I took over and we brought in, we've got 8 seniors right now. So when we brought in that class, we didn't shy away from any scheduling. So we've gone after really tough teams the last couple of years. Played Case every year, Carnegie every year. Gone to Chicago's tournament.
Yeah.
We're just in WashU's tournament, and so we wanted to show them what the top of Division III basketball looks like and feels like, and kind of been snake bit the last couple years. We played Carnegie really tough.
Right.
Lost to them in overtime the last time they were at our place. Had played Case to overtime last year, so we've been right on the edge of competing, not just competing with, but taking down some of these really top tier teams. So it's just good validation that our process is working, and I think we knew we could win that game, but just getting that validation and being able to celebrate a really nice win early in the season was just awesome, and that really kind of started some good momentum that we've held on to since.
And then the Case Western Reserve game, I thought that beating them, they've struggled a little bit, but then again, they just won that big home game against Carnegie Mellon.
Mhm.
I watched the Carnegie game, and Case is loaded. You look at Sam Trunley and all the pieces they have. You guys knocked Case off. I thought that was another huge win for your program. That was on December 14th. They've won the UAA back to back, and you know that Todd has a really talented team. It's taken a while to gel it together, but
Mhm.
that one must have felt like a big one too.
And honestly, same deal, Bob. The last couple years, we've played them so tough. 2 years ago at their place, it could have gone either way. It was, tied down the stretch with 3 or 4 minutes to go. And then last year, we honestly had them beat, and then we fouled a 3-point shooter in the last minute and lost in overtime. So just another win against a great program. He's always had really experienced teams, and I think this year's group they're just taking a little longer to mesh and develop. But I know there's talent over there, and man, they can fill it up, as you can see with Trunley and some of their other guys. So yeah, just another win, especially on the road. Just to continue to validate our guys and know that we've always known we could be at this level, but sometimes you just need to prove it to yourself that you can do it night in and night out too.
And now we're in the middle of construction central. Can you hear this sound behind me?
I can't hear anything, so I
That's
think you're
that makes me feel great because it is so loud out here. This is great. The
yeah.
QCast technology is better than I thought, Chris.
There you go. Yep.
Another game more recently, I have so much respect for what Wabash has built and
Mhm.
how talented they are and how tough they play. January 8th, you knock off Wabash in a league game 64-58. That was a home game. I think you still have to go to Wabash, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So, but boy, a big one. Kind of when you have these home games, you feel like these are must wins. But knocking off Wabash had to feel like a big one as well.
Yeah, they've been so good the last couple of years and have done a really good job. Once they lost the group that went to the Final Four, Kyle's done a really good job of just ingraining that championship DNA in the program, so that they don't lose games. Like you got to go out and beat them, and we did it, and I think it's going to be even tougher when we go over to their place.
It will be.
So
That will
it's a
be a
good win too.
tough. That'll be a
Hmm.
tough road game.
Yep.
And then, I just obviously, you knock off Wittenberg 56-54. You're coming off a win over DePaul, which I believe was a 20-point win. I think
Mhm.
DePaul has a really talented young nucleus there. Shout out to my buddy's son Brady Kunka, who's in the middle of
Yep.
that talented nucleus.
Yep.
But the DePaul game, that was an impressive one. I mean, to come out of there, you're thinking maybe if we could win this anyway is good, but 20-point win, pretty impressive performance Wednesday night.
Yeah, we've had a couple really good second halves, especially as of late when it's been a fun transition, difficult at times, but fun to go from the hunter to the hunted, and it's a different mentality when you're maybe the marquee game on some of these team schedules, and so being able to just withstand or know you're going to get everybody's best, whether that's 20, 25, 30, 35 minutes. At some point, if we keep playing to our standard, we believe that we've got the talent and the depth to withstand those runs, but yeah, Kenyon gave us everything we could handle. They were up at the half last Saturday. Wittenberg gave us a really good run. We couldn't buy a shot over there, and they put us in a tough position to have to make a play just to win by two. And then DePaul, the same thing. They didn't last quite as long, but yeah, we've got some really good teams in our league, and they've been challenging us, I think, in a really healthy way for our guys.
Tell me about that marquee matchup thing that you just mentioned, that the kind of you're in the bullseye sort of thing, because Illinois Wesleyan will have a shaky game against someone, and people will be like, well, why did they play a close game against Wheaton or North Central? And a lot of times it's like, hey, look, I mean, teams are getting up to play you. Teams are good. Teams are talented. They have good players. Is there something to that? Like you're the leader, and people are coming in, and there's the bullseye. Is that a legit thing? Because I'd like to be able to use that, Chris, if that's a legit thing. I feel like it is.
I think it absolutely is, when we talked about that, is we brought it back to ourselves, and so we brought it back when we were. So we've got eight seniors, so we talk about that group a lot, being the primary um, frame of reference. But so when that group was all sophomores, we played Wabash and Worcester. I don't know if it was back to back. There might have been one in between, but we had both of those two teams. They were both ranked, and we beat them both on our home floor and then we played awesome and they were big wins that our guys were looking forward to. And I want to say maybe a week later or a week earlier, we dropped a game that in our minds we shouldn't have, and every single one of our guys would have been lying and said, hey, were you up for this game as much as you were for ranked Worcester coming into our place and ranked Wabash? So I think taking our guys back to when we were the Hunters and had a ranked opponent on our schedule, like that was the game. Like it's almost like anything else doesn't really matter. But if you can knock off a ranked
Right.
team, they get up for that. So I think it's helped our guys understand what the mindset on the other side is, knowing that, hey, we were that team that couldn't be more excited to have that marquee win on our schedule, even if we weren't competing for an at-large or a conference championship. Like you can still make some really big noise and take a lot of pride in that type of win.
It's great perspective. And it's cool
Yep.
that you've been on both sides of it in a few years, right? It's
Yep.
really great perspective.
Hmm.
From your standpoint, Chris, and we're talking to Chris Sullivan, the head men's basketball coach at Denison. The Big Red are having a huge year. This is your fifth season as a head coach. You've been there 14 years. You were the assistant before that. Your first year was that awful COVID year, right? That was the first. That was you got the job, and we go into 2020 or 2021. The
Yep.
season we'd all like to sort of put behind us. What was that like? having that season be your first? And I can't even remember. Did Denison even play any games? I don't remember.
So I tell the story all the time. On March 10th, it was Wednesday, March 10th. Bob Galoni, who was the previous head coach who I'd worked for 9 years, unbelievable mentor, but he announced that he was stepping down, and so I was officially named the head coach on Wednesday, March 10th. On the Friday the 13th was when COVID shut everything down, and we sent our players home for spring break and told them not to come back. And then on March 17th, my wife and I found out that she was pregnant with our first son. And so it was like that week was just an absolute whirlwind. Um, but in a backwards way, it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise that year. We ended up playing just 10 games in league. So it was kind of a really good low pressure way for me to kind of get my legs under me as a head coach and experiment with some things and spend a lot of practice time just developing my own culture, a lot of which is carryover from Coach Galoni. Um, and I really got to, I hired Devin Price, who was an unbelievable assistant for me the last couple of years, who's now at Brown. And we just got to solely focus on, coaching that group, playing 10 games and bringing in an awesome recruiting class. And they are now seniors. So that year, it was very different and out of control. But as I look back now, it was almost a blessing in disguise just to keep things simple, recruit our butts off, and just really establish a foundation for what we want it to become the next couple of years.
In terms of kind of your background, I talked to a lot of coaches on here that have come into Division III from other places and have had to kind of embrace it and learn it. You're one of those that's on the opposite side. You played at Wittenberg. You were an All-American at Wittenberg, 2011, I believe. You're the career leader in three-pointers made, 241. You scored over 1,000 points, almost 1,100 actually. In terms of Division III, you've been in it as a student athlete. Now you're in it. You were in it as an assistant, and now as a head coach. You've stayed in it, right? What is it about Division III, Chris, that you love so much for you to kind of build a career around Division III?
Um, Man, especially nowadays where it's Division III and everything's a lot different than when I started, but I just think it's the most pure form of basketball that guys they give everything to the game and to the school and don't get much in return other than the opportunity to keep playing. And I was really lucky to grow up in a basketball family. My middle brother, my younger brother Kevin played at DePaul in our league, coached at Kenyon, coached at Emory with Zim for a couple of years. So he's a D3 junkie. And then my youngest brother played Division I and coached Division I. So I got to know a lot of other programs, even though I've only been a part of two, so to speak, Wittenberg and Denison. Um, but I had such an unbelievable experience at Wittenberg playing for Bill Brown, legendary coach. And then just fell in love with coaching here at Denison and really found no reason to leave. I love Denison. I think the school's in an unbelievable shape and we're set to build a program like this
Right.
and try to continue that. And just love what we built with our guys, with my coaches. And yeah, it's just a great balance of being able to pour everything you can into your passions into these guys and kind of keep it as simple as that, if that makes sense. I
It
don't know.
absolutely makes sense. And I was going to ask you about your brother, so I'm glad that you brought that up. That's a really cool tie as well. Um,
Mm.
tell us a little bit about Denison itself for people that are looking at the top 25, saying, okay, I've heard of Randolph-Macon. I don't know much about Denison. Just tell us a little bit like about the school itself, if you would, Chris.
Yeah, so we're just outside Columbus, Ohio. It's a really high academic Division III program. The one thing about the basketball program that really attracted me, I always felt that this was a place that had potential. You look at a lot of other perennial successful Division III programs. A lot of them are high academic schools, and we always felt like why not us as well. We've enhanced our facilities over the last couple of years. Our admissions continues to get tougher and tougher, which makes my job a little harder, but makes the school even more attractive because of the academic reputation and educational opportunities you'll get. Um, and I feel like our league is, while it's tough, it has the ability for new programs to emerge. If you can develop the talent, the culture, and do it the right way. So I always felt like we could do it because if you look back 20, 30, 40 years, Denison basketball has next to no tradition.
Right.
And I felt like we wanted to be the first ones to do it and really do it in a pretty meaningful way. And then we had tastes of it in my years as an assistant. We got to the conference championship maybe my second year here, and then in 17 we went 22-5, set a program record for wins, kind of had our first taste of the top 25. And so like there were signs that showed me that hey, you can do it here. And then and obviously things have bounced our way a little bit, and we put in the work, and our guys have put in a ton of work. And yeah, I feel like we're just reaping a little bit of those rewards right now.
It's a great story, and there's stories similar across the country where someone's come into a program and said, why can't we do that?
Mhm.
And they've built it, and that's what's going on at Denison, and it's really cool. NPI, how closely do you follow NPI? The D3 Datacast guys have done a phenomenal job of educating people on it, and they have NPI in real time, or at least daily, on their site where you can go. You guys are number 9 right now. Number 9, you talk about like being in the top 8. You start to be those protected seeds, and building the bracket around these quadrants of 8. How closely, Chris, are you paying attention, if you are at all, to that new NPI?
A little bit. It's something that I keep my eye on. Like at this point, I think the when we looked at it most was the last couple of years in trying to determine how strong we wanted to schedule and make sure that that was taken care of. And then it was okay, once our schedule is strong enough, because we had snake bit by that. I know that the dials have changed a little bit, but when we went 22-5, we got left out of the NCAA tournament because of our strength of schedule. And part of that was out of our control with the conference and how that shaped out. But we played a non-league schedule that wasn't as hard as it needed to be. And so that was one lesson learned the hard way. And we said, hey, we're going to put ourselves in a position where if we take care of business and win those games, it's going to be strong enough for us to have a chance, at an at-large. So
Yeah, and I would say again, a commercial for D3 Datacast guys. Check out their latest video, their latest show. It came out this Monday. They go back through. They did an episode earlier where they did the whole thing. They go back through, and one of the comments that they make in terms of what do you tell people about scheduling? Schedule the toughest schedule that you can win against.
mhm,
I think that's a great way to say it.
mhm,
So the way one program schedules is going to be different than another. But in general, what I'm seeing so far, I like NPI. I feel like I look at the NPI right now, and now that we're in mid-January, that there's enough data where things are really starting to make sense to me. I'm looking at that picture saying like, yeah, those are the right teams. There might be a couple things where I'm like, huh, but I kind of like that there's no more like 5 criteria that humans are having to subjectively juggle
mhm.
and make these decisions. I like going on there and saying like, okay, Illinois Wesleyan's 4 today. They're a tenth of a point above this team. And now I understand that the next game they play, if they win, it does this. If they lose, it does this. I like
Yep.
that, actually.
Yep.
I'm sure some people miss the old way. But yeah, Denison number 9, Chris, is a great place to be right now. Because if you're talking about needing a pool C, boy, you're coming from a position of strength right now. Wanted to ask you about your team, really talented group. Wanted to first ask you, um, I've noticed that Darren Rubin hasn't played a game since January 2nd against Ohio Wesleyan. I assume an injury. Is there any update on kind of when he comes back? Or does he come back?
Yes, he just tweaked an ankle against Ohio Wesleyan, and he should be back for tomorrow's game.
Hey,
So
that well,
fortunate to kind of
that's a hot
weather that
take.
storm a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've just given some scouting help to, is it
So
Hiram? Is that who
Hiram.
you have tomorrow?
Yeah, they'll figure it out one way or the other.
And certainly, Worcester's got plenty of time to see the Hiram game. So, yeah,
Mhm.
so I appreciate that. Ricky, is it Ricky Radke? Is that how I'm
Yes.
pronounced? Um,
Yep.
13 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. He's shooting 6-13 from the field. You have a really balanced group. So when I look at your stats, I love the fact that what doesn't jump out is some dude averaging 24 points. Like it's a really balanced group. Talk a little bit about Ricky Radke and what he's doing for your team, Chris.
He's just been an unbelievable presence for the last 4 years. He's just Mr. Reliable. He's got that Tim Duncan mentality where he never gets shaken. And I think our guys have a ton of respect for all the hard work he's put into his game and just how he shows up every single day. You know, he missed probably half of league play last year and was playing hurt the other half. And our guys saw just his willingness to put his body on the line every single game with whatever he had left. And guys really around him, and he does an unbelievable job of just setting the tone and the mentality for everybody else. So he's our core, he's our foundation, and guys feed off of him a lot.
He's a 6'8" senior forward. He's the guy that comes from the state of Ohio. We'll talk about recruiting in just a second. Trevor Reed, who's another one of your starters, 6'8" sophomore forward from Missouri, 12 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Talk about Trevor Reed.
Trev's really come along. He with Ricky being out a lot of last year, or kind of in and out, Trev was thrown into the fire as a freshman last year and learned a ton. And we got to put him in positions that had Ricky been healthy, he might not have been in. And so he had a little bit of a slow start to this year. We kind of made a slight positional change to try to put him in his best positions, as a skilled face-up four-man who can stretch you and shoot it, as well as just throw some monster dunks around inside. So I think a little change that we made and a ton of confidence coming from him. He's got that ability to just explode. I think as a freshman last year, he had maybe 28, 29 at Washington and Lee. So you mentioned that balance piece. I think if you look at the averages, they're pretty balanced, but we've got a number of guys that can just go off on
Right.
any given night for 20, 25 plus.
Isn't that? I think teams that are set up like that are really dangerous. I think that my guys, Illinois Wesleyan, are the same, and that they tend to every year under Ron Rose, the leading scorer might average 14, and then it goes 14, 13, 12, 10, and then all of those guys, like your guys, all those guys can score 20 on a given
Mhm.
night. I feel like as a coach, those teams are hard to plan for, right? Because you're having to prep for 9 or 10 guys. And I mean, is there something to that a team that's constructed like yours is a little bit hard to kind of scout and prepare for?
We came in here, we tried to build the deepest, most talented roster that we could. And I think while that's difficult to do, I think the more difficult thing to do is to get guys to sacrifice a little bit of their own scoring at times, or their role or minutes. I think, we've got guys all over our roster who, where if they were at a different school, might be starting, might be their leading scorer, might be, coming off the bench for them while they don't play a ton for us. So, yeah, we've got a ton of depth, a ton of experience, which helps, and tremendous balance. And I think more than anything, just a real willingness to do whatever it takes to win for the team. And that I think is probably our biggest strength is we're a connected group. They're
Sure.
selfless and they play for each other, and just understand if it's not my night, maybe it's Cam Smith's, maybe Darren Rubin gets to go tonight, maybe Tyler Miller. We've got weapons all over the place who can step up to that. And I think that's that's where championship DNA is kind of lives.
Kellen Smith, we talked about, hit that shot against Carnegie Mellon, which was huge. He's a 6'3" sophomore guard, also a guy from the state of Ohio. 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He's shooting 570 from the field. Talk a little bit about Kellen Smith, if you would.
Cal is Mr. Reliable, almost the guard version of Ricky, if you will. He's tough, he's physical, he's got good size for a guard, and he's got kind of a throwback game. I'm a big numbers guy, and if you read my bio, I love to shoot the three ball. But he really changed a lot of my philosophy in terms of putting him in positions to live in that mid range. And yeah, so he'll go back to basket as a guard. We call it a little Barkley move. He'll get to that. And his mid-range pull-up is automatic. So he's helped me grow as a coach, and he's another weapon that you can't overlook.
Another one of those guys in your balanced lineup is Cameron Smith, 8 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. He's shooting 60% from the field. Another guy that could score more if you needed him to. Really good player. Talk about Cameron Smith, if you would.
We recruited Cam as an athlete and a defender, and that's where he's, built his foundation, but he's come such a long way as a shooter. I think his freshman year, he maybe only took 15, 20 threes. And I think he's made 25 on the year and shooting a really good clip. I think he hit 5 of 6 against Ohio Wesleyan. So just a young man who's played a ton of minutes, meaningful minutes since his freshman year, and put time in the gym and worked and developed. Um, and yeah, just another guy that you put on the scouting report, and maybe teams at times can overlook him, and the next thing you know, he's got 18 on like 7 shots, and
Right.
yeah, he's played great as of late. Was NCAC Player of the Week, I believe last week. Um, yeah, he brings a ton of consistency on both ends for us.
And then I asked about Darren Rubin's injury. So good news that he's on his way back. But boy, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, shoots the three at 39%, 83% free throw shooter. Talk about Darren Rubin and I guess what his return will mean to your team.
Um, so he's this is actually his 5th year at Denison. He was part of that COVID class, and he's able to was able to stay for this upcoming year because he missed all of last year to injury as well. And so that was a big hit for us last year. I'd be lying to you, Bob, if I didn't think that last year's team was capable of being, maybe this good or close to this good. But Darren's injury certainly took a hit for us, and we had to find ways to combat that. And so having him at full strength and just seeing him with a pep in his step and a glow in his smile, like just what he brings to this team has been so awesome because I know he's had a long, tough journey to get back to this point. So I'm excited for him to come back tomorrow. But I mean, you talk about, we've mentioned a couple other guys and how they can explode for 2025, but like Darren had 45 2 years ago. And
Wow.
so he talked about explosiveness. He can fill it up in a hurry. And I think he's the guy that could, when he's on, like offensively, we're at a whole another clip.
Just a few more topics for you. Appreciate the time, Chris. I know you guys are
Mhm.
busy getting ready for a game tomorrow. The NCAC is a league that has changed dynamically so much in the last few years. I remember 20 years ago, just Worcester, Wittenberg, and then you just figure out what order they're going to finish in. It would come down to that final game between the two. So the league's a lot different now. I think different programs have emerged, including yours. You think of what Wabash did and get into a Final Four a few years ago. Just seems like up and down the league, it's a totally different picture. Certainly, those two programs that have always been good are strong. But just talk a little like what's it like competing in the NCAC? I feel like sometimes it's a little bit of an underrated league in that people sometimes are looking for like, well, who is the favorite and who do I vote for in the top 25? Is it Worcester?
Mhm.
Is it Denison? Talk a little bit about the league.
So it's all I know, right? I played at Wittenberg, and I've been at Denison, and then, like I said, my brother played at DePaul, coached at Kenyon, so like I've been living it and breathing it for the last 20 years or so. But it's an unbelievable league with a lot of history and tradition, like you said, with Wittenberg and Worcester being the two winningest Division III programs of all time, and a lot of that pride and tradition is what I was able to kind of understand and really take in and have brought a lot of, my experience 10, 15 years ago at Wittenberg. And, there's, it's not very complex, but there's a recipe to being have always, followed, right? Same with Worcester. And I think while the top of our league is still, as good as possible, we do well in the tournament, Wabash Final Four. Lots of teams that do well. I do think the middle and the bottom has risen up a good bit with teams like us. Ohio Wesleyan is always good, and it should become more balanced. Where it used to just be like you said, it was Wittenberg, Worcester. I'll still get texts from alumni when we beat Wittenberg, Wesleyan, Wabash, or Worcester. There's Denison alum from 20, 30 years ago who never beat a W. And like so it's that
Right.
while that's unfortunate to go back, but I think it's really cool that they still take a lot of pride in that, and that at the same time that's kind of become commonplace with where we're at now. And so I think it's just really started to balance itself out. And a lot more of the teams who, I guess as a player, I didn't have to worry about now are starting to compete at higher and higher levels and just provide more parity. And yeah, just make it tougher for you got to win a league title at our league. It's not just, hey, you got to win two
Right.
or three games that really matter. You got to win, 16.
And then, I don't know if I assume it's next year, but John Carroll coming in from a men's basketball standpoint, they're a perennial top 25 type program.
Yep.
Just any initial thoughts on what John Carroll brings to the mix?
Yeah, they've made my job a lot harder. But I think in a good way. Again, the non-conference scheduling, you can control the strength of that to some degree, and I think just adding another quality
Yeah.
top tier opponent in league, while it makes it more difficult, it enhances your resume as a program and as a conference.
In terms of recruiting, you've got an Ohio-based roster, but then you're also going to some other places. I know you've got Trevor Reed, we mentioned, was from Missouri. I know one of your freshmen this year is a kid I remember seeing a lot on Twitter from Illinois. You've got an Illinois. I think you're not afraid to get in the mix and battle, the CCIWs in that Chicago suburban area that is so loaded with D3
Mhm.
talent. What is your approach to recruiting, Chris? Like, how do you look at like where you go for your kids?
Our two main bases are Ohio, number one, and then the suburban Chicago area. Denison has always yielded really well in the Illinois Chicago area. So those are our two main home bases, and we're just trying to get the best academic talent from those two areas in Ohio to stay here and in Illinois to come down. And then outside of there, for the most of our guys will fall kind of in that 6, 8 hour radius. We've got Charlotte, Detroit, St. Louis, um, yeah, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Ohio. And then every now and then we'll mix in. We've got a freshman on the roster from San Francisco. We've had guys from the East Coast every now and then. So we'll branch out even further than that. But for the most part, yeah, we're in Ohio, kind of Midwest, with our target as the best academic talent we can find. We want to bring to Denison.
Do you agree? I've always felt and tried to tell people from different parts of the country that the Midwest is so great because the kids have such a high impression of Division III. Like as an Illinois Wesleyan person, I can tell you that a kid from Naperville North or Hinsdale Central, they've got kids older than them that they played with that are at Augustana and Illinois Wesleyan and Wisconsin Platteville, and they think that playing at a D3 is a big deal. And I know that you'd say the same about Ohio because the presence, whereas like California or other parts, maybe in the East, different parts, where kids don't think D3 is that good. They think that you got to be a scholarship guy. Have you found that, Chris, that some of these areas that you're in, that you identified as your top bases,
Mhm.
you don't have to really sell the kids that D3 is good basketball? Is that accurate?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's so many good colleges in our league in the OAC and yeah, up in the Chicago area that have produced good talent. And all the younger guys have seen them succeed and get great educations and great playing experience. So I think just the relevance, the quality, and the access to seeing great Division III basketball is huge. And then the other thing I think that's really helpful on the flip side is so many of the Ohio high schools and Chicago areas, like they're big schools.
Right.
If there's a young man who's playing a lot as a sophomore
Yeah.
at New Trier where there's 3,000 kids
Right.
and Olentangy Orange where there's 2,500, like if you can play at that level, I think that makes a huge difference in the preparedness when they get to play at our conference. That sometimes different areas where it's not as competitive, it might take a little bit longer to adjust. And most of our guys come from that DNA.
Yeah. Our last game two days ago at Milliken, our leading scorer, Carlo Kolak, I think was the sixth man at New Trier.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
you get these kids, a sixth man. And
Hmm.
and so to your point, when you're playing at schools like this, you can play. Last question for you, Chris, just in terms of like keeping the guys focused on the task at head. Tomorrow you have Hiram. We mentioned that's at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Hmm.
Then boy, I'm looking at that schedule and there's a monster one looming Wednesday. So you're at Worcester.
Who's that? I could tell you who that is.
Yeah, you're at a school that you've played against a lot of times, you've coached
Yeah.
against a lot of times. Um, Obviously that Worcester one is one of those that you just circle when the season starts. And right now where we are,
Hmm.
holy cow! And I know you got a game in front of you tomorrow, so I'm not asking you to overlook Hiram, but your guys have two big games upcoming. How do you keep them focused one game at a time? Because you certainly have some big ones coming up.
We something that's really helped us this year. We've actually started working with my brother, my youngest brother Brian, who has the Davidson background. He's now a performance psychologist, and so he's come in and worked with our guys because we struggled a little bit from a mental performance standpoint last year, and knew, hey, if we're going to really achieve and reach our goals this year, we can't be afraid to talk about anything, the pressures, the
Sure.
anxieties, the distractions that come with performing at a high level and winning. And so working with him has allowed our guys to talk about that stuff openly, honestly, and then bring it back down to, okay, what is the next most important thing that we need to do? And just doing what matters on a day-to-day basis, on a possession by possession basis. So it is a little bit cliche to take it one possession at a time, one day at a time, but ultimately that's the hard work that our guys have put in both physically and mentally to just stay focused on the practice that we have in 2 hours, and then the walkthrough that we have the next day, and whoever that next opponent is, just trying to stay focused and knowing if we do that, the results will take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I mean you can't afford to approach it any other way, right? Because we talked about earlier, you guys are leading the league. You're 19 in the country, you're 6-0 in the league, and all these teams are going to be ready to play you. So
Mhm.
you can't afford to do it any other way. Um, this has been great, Chris. I mean, I think it's awesome to get people kind of a little better understanding of what you guys have been building there. And it's really been impressive to watch your games this year and to see what's been going on there. Your team is really talented. I mean, it's a group that can do some damage for sure. Um, just wanted to congratulate you on what you've built, what you're building. You can kind of see where this is heading, and it's exciting. I want to give you final thoughts here on the QCast. Certainly, Big Red Nation's going to tune into this. A lot of people from D3 Nation wanting to learn more about Denison will tune in. What would you leave everyone with today, Chris, on the QCast?
Just gratitude. I think all you guys do such a great job of providing some really awesome excitement and exposure around basketball at our level. When I've got a group of alumni who are just dialed in. They watch every game. One of them has split screens with our game and some opponents, and that was the first text I got after you tweeted, "Hey, we're gonna have Coach Sully on the podcast." I got a screenshot of that from some of our young alumni. So I think they were even more excited to get me on
That's
this
great.
podcast. And then and a couple days ago, maybe a Monday or Tuesday, we had some film, and I to leave in a hurry said I got a Zoom call, and it was just a facilities call, but one of our players is like, "Oh, is it the QCast?" So like they know what's going on.
That's
They
great.
follow everything on Twitter, and so they just get really excited about opportunities for us to showcase who we are and what we're about. So I just appreciate the heck out of this opportunity.
Well, it's my pleasure. And days like this are fun. You wake up in the morning, you look at the scoreboard, and you got these UAA games and these NCAC games and other games on Friday. Like Emory's playing at NYU. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable game.
Yeah.
Chicago and Carnegie Mellon, unbelievable. You got Wesleyan playing at Hamilton tonight. So this to me, this is the best time of year when we're in the middle of the conference season
Yep.
and everyone's playing big games that matter. Couldn't be better. And you guys, Chris, are in the middle of it. So good luck tomorrow against Hiram, and certainly good luck in that Wednesday marquee game at Worcester, which is a game that'll go a long way to determining that regular season championship. Folks, that's Chris Sullivan. He's the head men's basketball coach of Denison. The Big Red are rated number 19. They're 14-1. They're 6-0 in the league. Chris, this has been great chatting, and I hope to see you in a gym sooner than later.
Likewise. Thank you, Bob.